They say a mother's instinct never fails, that you can sense when your child is in danger, when something's wrong, when they need you. But what they don't tell you is this: that same instinct works in reverse. You can sense when your child has become the danger, when they're the ones you need to fear. I learned that lesson at 3:15 in the morning, lying in my bed in the darkness, listening to my son plan to rob me blind. Let me back up. My name is Iolanthe Lockridge. Yes, I know, it's a mouthful. My mother loved old Victorian novels, and I got stuck with a heroine's name and a working-class life. Most people call me Lonnie. I'm 64 years old, and I've lived in this small, three-bedroom house in Ohio for 32 years. The wallpaper's faded, the carpet's worn thin in the hallway, and there's a water stain on my bedroom ceiling that looks like a map of Florida. But it's mine. Paid off. Every single brick. I worked at Riverside Garment Factory for 42 years. Started when I was 22, right after I married Gerald. Ended when they finally let me retire at 63, my hands so cramped and twisted from years of industrial sewing that I can barely hold a coffee cup some mornings. But those deformed fingers, they built something. They built security. They built $83,400 in savings. That number isn't luck. It is an inheritance. It's every dollar I could squeeze out of an $8.50 an hour paycheck that eventually, after decades, climbed to $13.20. It's every Christmas where I bought my son Quillon one present instead of three. Every vacation I didn't take. Every restaurant meal I skipped. Every time I wore shoes until they fell apart because new ones cost $40 I could save instead. Gerald used to joke that I could stretch a dollar until it screamed. He didn't understand, not really, that for people like us, money isn't about being comfortable. It's about not being terrified. It's about knowing that if the car breaks down, if you get sick, if life decides to kick you while you're down, you won't end up on the street. When Gerald died 11 years ago, massive heart attack, just dropped while mowing the lawn on a Tuesday, he left me with $18,000 in credit card debt I didn't even know existed. Apparently, he'd been covering gaps in our budget with plastic for years, too ashamed to tell me. It took me 3 years of overtime shifts to pay it all off. After that, I promised myself, never again. Never again would I be one emergency away from losing everything. Never again would I let anyone else control my financial security. So I saved, and I saved, and I saved. And my son watched me do it. Quillon is 38 now. He's got his father's dark hair, my green eyes, and absolutely none of our work ethic. That sounds harsh, I know. A mother shouldn't say things like that. But after what I'm about to tell you, I think I've earned the right to be honest. I love my son. Let me be clear about that. I love him the way you love someone you held as a baby, someone whose scraped knees you kissed, whose nightmares you chased away. I love the memory of the boy he was, but the man he became. That's a different story. Quillon married Kestrel 6 years ago. She's 35, blonde, always dressed like she's heading to brunch at a country club we could never afford to join. She works part-time at some boutique downtown, the kind of place where a scarf costs more than my monthly grocery budget. She's always been, let's call it aspirational. She wants the life she sees on Instagram, the life where money is no object, where you renovate your kitchen every 3 years just because you're bored with the backsplash. And my son, God help him, he wants to give it to her. Over the past 3 years, Quillon has borrowed money from me 7 times, 7, each time with a different story. The transmission on the car died, unexpected tax bill, medical emergency, some investment opportunity that was definitely, absolutely, 100% going to pay off. Each time he promised, just this once, Mom, I swear I'll pay you back. I lent him a total of $24,000. I've gotten back $800. But even then, even after all that, I still hoped that deep down, My son was a good person who just made some bad choices. That eventually he'd figure it out. That the boy who used to tell me, "I'll always protect you, Mama," when he was 5 years old, was still in there somewhere. I was wrong. It was a Friday night when everything changed. Well, technically, Saturday morning. Quillen had been staying in my guest room for the past 2 weeks. He and Kestrel had some kind of fight. She kicked him out or he left. The story kept changing. And he showed up at my door with a duffel bag and that sheepish smile that used to melt my heart when he was a teenager, caught sneaking in past curfew. "Just for a few days, Mom," he'd said, "until we work things out." It had been 14 days. That Friday night, I'd gone to bed around 10, same as always. I'm a creature of habit. Wash my face, brush my teeth, check that the doors are locked, set my phone on the nightstand, lights out. Usually I fall asleep within 20 minutes. But that night, something kept me awake. Not insomnia exactly, more like an uneasiness I couldn't name. You know that feeling when your body knows something your brain hasn't figured out yet? Like when you walk into a room and it smells wrong, but you can't place why? That's what it felt like. So I was awake, lying in the dark, staring at that water stain on my ceiling. And then I heard Quillen's voice through the wall. His room shares a wall with mine. The house was built in 1974, and the insulation is basically tissue paper. I've heard him on phone calls before. Usually, I try not to listen. Privacy, you know. But this was different. His voice was low, careful, the tone people use when they're trying not to be overheard. I held my breath. "Take it all out, Kestrel." His words were muffled but clear. "She has $83,400 in there. The factory pension, her Social Security savings, everything." My heart stopped. Not a figure of speech. I literally felt it stutter in my chest. "She'll never know until morning," he continued. "We'll clean it out before she wakes up." I could hear a woman's voice on the other end. Kestrel, agitated, excited. I couldn't make out her exact words, but I didn't need to. The tone said it all. Then Quillen again. "The PIN is 4729. My birthday. She uses it for everything. She's sentimental like that. Trust me." He was right. That was my PIN. I'd been using his birthday for years because it was easy to remember, and because every time I entered it, I thought of him, of the day he was born, of the promise I'd made to always take care of him. The irony wasn't lost on me. "First thing in the morning," he said, "soon as the bank opens at 7, hit the ATM, take out the maximum, then wait an hour and do it again. By the time she realizes what happened, we'll have at least $20,000. Then we can work on getting access to the rest." The rest. He wanted all of it. I lay there in the darkness, my body completely still, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to burst through that wall, to scream at him, to demand an explanation. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to call the police right then and there. But I didn't move. I barely breathed. Because in that moment, something inside me shifted. The mother in me, the part that had spent 38 years making excuses for him, bailing him out, believing in him, that part went quiet. And something else took over, something colder, something clearer. I listened to him in the call, heard him say "I love you" to his wife with the same voice he'd just used to plot stealing my entire life savings. Heard his door open, his footsteps in the hallway, the bathroom light click on. And I smiled. Not from happiness, not from amusement. I smiled because I finally understood the game. I understood what I was dealing with. My son wasn't going through a rough patch. He wasn't making mistakes. He was making choices. Deliberate, calculated choices. And if he could plan and scheme and strategize, so could I. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My mind was too busy. I thought about the past 3 years, all those loans, all those promises. Every time he'd shown up with some crisis or another, and I'd open my wallet because that's what mothers do, right? We save our children. But I saw it differently now. Every visit, every phone call, every casual question about my finances. "How are you doing with money, Mom? You managing okay?" It wasn't concern.
It was reconnaissance. They'd been planning this. Maybe not this exact scenario, but something. They'd been waiting for the right moment. And apparently, Quillen getting kicked out of his own house, or whatever really happened, had created that moment. I thought about Tuesday afternoon, 5 days earlier. Quillen had shown up with donuts and coffee, my favorite kind, the expensive stuff from that place downtown. He'd been so sweet, so attentive, asked how I was doing, commented on how I'd kept everything so organized. Then casually, "You know, Mom, there are better ways to manage your money. Investment accounts, interest-bearing savings. Kestrel and I could help you set something up, maybe even a joint account, so if anything ever happens to you, everything's taken care of." I'd said no, politely but firmly. His smile had tightened, just for a second, just a flash of something that wasn't quite right. I'd ignored it then. I didn't ignore it now. Then Thursday. Kestrel had come by alone, unusual, since she normally treated my house like it might give her tetanus. She'd brought expensive cookies from that bakery where a single pastry costs $8. "Iolanthe," she'd said. She never called me Mom or anything close. "I work in banking, you know." She didn't. She worked at a clothing boutique. But I'd let her continue. With inflation, money that just sits there loses value. But if you invest it properly, you could live so much better. We could help you. You just need to sign a few papers. Sign a few papers. Transfer control. I'd said no to that too. She'd left with that same tight smile Quillen had worn. And Friday morning, my son had asked me point blank for $3,000. Said it was urgent. Said he'd pay me back in 2 weeks, just like he'd said the 7 times before. When I refused, he'd exploded. Called me selfish. Said I was old and what did I need money for anyway? I couldn't take it with me. That's when I'd asked him to leave my house. Not forever, just leave. He'd slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I'd stood there in my living room shaking, wondering if I'd been too harsh. Now I knew. I hadn't been harsh enough. Lying in bed that night, Saturday morning technically around 4 a.m., I made a decision. Several decisions, actually. I was not going to be a victim. I was not going to let my son and his wife steal 42 years of backbreaking work. I was not going to spend the rest of my life afraid in my own home, checking my bank account every hour, wondering when they'd strike next. But I also wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. Because here's what I'd learned in 64 years of life. People show you who they are when they think you can't see them. And Quillen had just shown me exactly who he was. Now I needed to show him who I was. I got up at 5:30 a.m., showered, dressed carefully in my good slacks and the blouse I saved for church. Did my makeup, something I rarely bothered with anymore. I wanted to look put together, capable, clear-minded. By 6:45, I was walking out my front door. Quillen's door was still closed. I didn't knock, didn't leave a note, just took my purse and left. The bus stop was 4 blocks away. The morning was cool, the sky just starting to lighten. I walked slowly, my knees aren't what they used to be, and tried to organize my thoughts. First National Bank opened at 8 a.m. on Saturdays. I'd been banking there for 30 years. I knew the manager, Benjamin Walsh. He was a good man, helped me set up my savings account when I first started trying to build something after Gerald died. I was going to need his help now. The bus arrived at 7:15. I sat by the window and watched my neighborhood pass by. Houses like mine, small, working class. The kind of places where people mowed their own lawns and fixed their own cars and saved for months to buy anything bigger than a toaster. These were my people. We understood the value of a dollar because we'd never had enough of them. And my son, who'd grown up here, who'd seen me work myself to exhaustion to keep a roof over his head, he'd forgotten. Or maybe he'd never learned. Maybe I protected him too well, made life too easy. Maybe this was partially my fault, but it was definitely going to be my solution. First National Bank sits on the corner of Main and Oakwood, a solid brick building that's been there since before I was born. I've always liked that about it, the permanence. In a world where everything changes, where stores close and restaurants become something else every few years, the bank stays. I walked through the glass doors at exactly 8:03 a.m. The lobby was quiet. A young teller I didn't recognize was setting up her station. An older gentleman, Mr. Patterson, he'd been coming here every Saturday morning for as long as I could remember, was filling out a deposit slip at the counter. "Good morning, Mrs. Lockridge." The receptionist, a woman named Angela, smiled at me. "You're here early." "I need to speak with Benjamin Walsh, please. It's urgent." Something in my tone must have conveyed the seriousness because Angela's smile faded. She picked up her phone, spoke quietly for a moment, then nodded. "He'll see you right away. Second office, on the left." Benjamin Walsh looked up as I entered. He was 44, with graying hair and glasses that made him look older. We'd worked together when I was paying off Gerald's debt. He'd helped me restructure everything, set up automatic savings transfers, taught me basics about protecting my money. "Iolanthe." He stood, concern crossing his face. "Angela said it was urgent. Is everything all right?" I closed the door behind me and sat down. My hands were shaking slightly, so I folded them in my lap. "No, Benjamin, everything is not all right. My family is trying to steal my money." I watched his expression shift. Not surprise, exactly. More like resignation. Like this was a story he'd heard before. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. So I did. I told him about the loans, the visits, the questions, the manipulation attempts, and finally, the conversation I'd overheard at 3:15 that morning. Benjamin listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and sighed. "I'm sorry, Iolanthe, truly, this happens more often than people realize. Financial exploitation of elderly family members is—" "I'm not elderly," I interrupted. "I'm 64, and I'm sharp as I've ever been." "I didn't mean—" "I know." I waved a hand. "I'm sorry, I'm angry." "And I'm hurt. And I need your help." "Of course. What do you need?" I'd been thinking about this all morning, on the bus, walking from the stop to the bank, sitting in the quiet lobby. I'd run through every scenario, every possibility. "First, I need to change my PIN, immediately." "Done. We can do that right now." He turned to his computer. "New number?" I thought for a moment. 3108. My mother's birthday, March 10th, 1948. She died when I was 19, long before Quillon was born. He'd never known her, would never guess that date. "Changed," Benjamin confirmed. "What else?" "I need alerts set up on my account. Text messages for any transaction over $100, and I need it flagged so that any withdrawal over $500 requires me to be physically present with photo ID." "That's smart, very smart." He was typing rapidly. "Done. Anything else?" I took a deep breath. This was the big one. "I need to open a second account, one that nobody knows about except you and me." Benjamin looked up, understanding dawning. "You want to move the money?" "Most of it. I want to transfer everything except, let's say, $5,400. Leave that in my current account, the account that Quillon knows about. The rest goes into a new account with no debit card, no checkbook, just a passbook." "And where should we mail the passbook?" I'd thought about this too. "My friend Dorothea Brennan." I gave him her address. "I've already called her. She's expecting it." Benjamin nodded slowly. "Iolanthe, I have to ask. Are you sure you want to do this? This is your son. Maybe if you talk to him—" "He came into my bedroom at 3 a.m. and planned how to rob me blind." My voice was steady. "I've talked to him. I've given him chance after chance after chance. I'm done talking." "All right." Benjamin created the new account. It took 20 minutes. Savings account number 847-552193, registered solely in my name. No joint access. No beneficiaries listed yet. I'd add those later, after I'd consulted with a lawyer about my will. We transferred $78,000. Watching those numbers move on the screen felt surreal. That was my entire life. Every early morning, every missed holiday, every worn-out pair of shoes. Every time I'd chosen a cheaper option, skipped a treat, saved instead of spent. And now I was hiding it. From my own son. There's one more thing, I said, the debit card for my old account, the one with $5,400 left. I need to cancel it. Of course. But I need the old card, the physical card. Don't destroy it yet. Benjamin frowned. Mrs. Lockridge, if we cancel the account access, the card won't work anyway. It'll just be a piece of plastic. I know, I said. That's exactly what I want. Understanding crossed his face. You're going to leave it in your wallet. If someone tries to steal it, I said carefully, I want them to find it, and I want them to try to use it. And I want a record of that attempt. Benjamin paused. That's actually brilliant. The system will log every attempted transaction. Time, location, amount. If anyone tries to use a canceled card, we'll have proof of intent. Exactly. He pulled up another screen, clicked a few things. Done. The card is canceled but not destroyed. Any attempt to use it will be flagged as suspicious activity and recorded. I left the bank at 9:47 a.m. with a receipt for the transfer, new PIN memorized, and a feeling of grim satisfaction. The hard part was done. Now I just had to wait. The house was empty when I got home. Quillon's car was gone, probably off meeting Kestrel, finalizing their plan. I made myself lunch. Tomato soup from a can and a grilled cheese sandwich. Ate it slowly at the kitchen table, trying to keep my hands from shaking. What I'd just done felt enormous, permanent, like I'd crossed some invisible line and couldn't go back. But then I remembered, 3:15 a.m. Take it all out. She'll never know. My son had crossed that line first. The afternoon dragged. I tried to read, couldn't focus. Turned on the TV, couldn't follow the plot. Finally, I went out to my small garden and pulled weeds until my back ached, and my hands were dirty, and I was too physically tired to think. Quillon came home around 6 p.m. I heard his car in the driveway, his key in the lock. Hey, Mom. He appeared in the kitchen doorway. His voice was casual, light, like everything was normal. Where were you today? I got up and you were gone. I had errands. I didn't look up from the carrots I was peeling for dinner. What kind of errands? Now I did look at him. Personal errands, Quillon. The kind that don't concern you. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, suspicion. It was gone too quickly to tell. I'm making pot roast, I said. You're welcome to stay for dinner. Nah, I'm meeting Kestrel. We're working things out. Might not be back until late. Take your time, I said. He left. I heard his car start, pull away. I stood in my kitchen, holding a half-peeled carrot, and tried to remember what it felt like when he was small, when he'd run to me with scraped knees, when he'd needed me to chase away the monsters under his bed. Had I failed him somehow, made him into this person who could look me in the eye and lie, or had he just turned out this way despite everything I'd tried to teach him? I didn't have an answer. I'm not sure there was one. Saturday night, I went through my normal routine, washed the dishes, wiped down the counters, locked the doors, checked my phone, 2 new text messages from First National Bank confirming the changes to my account. I went to bed at 10 p.m., same as always. But I didn't sleep. I lay in the darkness with my eyes closed, my breathing slow and even, every muscle relaxed. Playing possum, my mother used to call it. Pretending to be asleep so perfectly that anyone watching would believe it. Because I knew what was coming. I knew what Quillon planned to do, and I was going to let him do it. The house creaked and settled around me. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. A car passed outside, headlights briefly sweeping across my ceiling. At 11:47 p.m., I heard Quillon's car in the driveway. He came in quietly. I heard the front door open and close with barely a sound. Heard his footsteps, careful, measured, coming down the hallway. They stopped outside my door. I kept my breathing steady. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. The rhythm of deep sleep. The doorknob turned slowly. The door opened. My bedroom was dark except for the pale light from the street lamp outside filtering through the curtains. Enough to see shapes, not details. I felt Quillon's presence in the doorway, standing there, watching me.
Every instinct screamed to open my eyes, to sit up, to demand what the hell he thought he was doing. I didn't move. "Mom?" His whisper was barely audible. "Mom, you awake?" I didn't respond, didn't change my breathing. He waited. 10 seconds, 20, testing. Then he moved into the room. I could track him by sound. 3 steps toward my dresser, the soft scrape of my purse being lifted, the whisper of the zipper opening. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it, but I kept still, kept my face relaxed, kept breathing. The sound of my wallet opening, papers rustling. He was going through everything. Then a soft, satisfied exhale. He'd found the card. I heard the distinct click of a phone camera. Once, twice. He was photographing my debit card, front and back, getting the numbers, then everything going back, wallet into purse, purse onto the dresser.
Not quite where it had been. He'd placed it 3 inches to the left, but close enough that he probably thought I wouldn't notice. His footsteps retreating, the door closing. Silence. I lay there for a long time after he left. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20. Then I opened my eyes. A single tear ran down my temple into my hair. Not because of the attempted theft. Not because of the money. Because 38 years ago, I'd held a baby boy and promised to protect him from the world. I'd never imagined I'd need to protect myself from him. I got up at 5:30 a.m. Sunday morning, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with my phone in front of me. At 6:45, I heard Quillen's door open, heard him in the bathroom, heard him leave the house without saying goodbye. He was going to meet Kestrel. They were going to the ATM. I sipped my coffee and waited. At 7:08, my phone buzzed, a text from First National Bank. Alert! Attempted transaction on account number 482663108 declined. Card flagged as canceled. Location ATM, number 1847, Main Street and 5th Avenue. I set the phone down and closed my eyes. They'd tried. They'd actually tried. At 7:11, my phone rang. Quillen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello? Mom? His voice was tight, stressed. Mom, we have a problem. What kind of problem, Quillen? Your card. Something's wrong with your bank card. Kestrel tried to use the ATM, and it's saying the card is invalid or canceled. Did you do something to your account? The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity to call me and admit they'd tried to use my card. Kestrel tried to use my card? I kept my voice neutral. Why would Kestrel have my card? Silence. Then, she was trying to help. You mentioned you needed cash and... Quillen. I cut him off. I never gave Kestrel my card. I never asked for help. What's actually going on here? More silence. I could almost hear him recalculating, trying to figure out what I knew. Mom, please. Just tell me what's wrong with the account. That card, I said calmly, is for an account I closed 2 years ago. I kept the card in my wallet because I forgot to throw it away. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you coming into my room last night at midnight and going through my purse? The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. Then, you were awake. I was awake. Mom, listen, I can explain. You came into my bedroom while you thought I was sleeping, and you stole my debit card so your wife could drain my bank account this morning. What exactly is there to explain? We're desperate, his voice cracked. We're about to lose everything. The house, the car, Mom, they're going to foreclose. Then maybe you shouldn't have bought a house you couldn't afford. Maybe Kestrel shouldn't spend $200 on a single blouse. Maybe you should have paid me back even one of the 7 loans I gave you. This is different. This is everything. No, Quillen. My savings is everything. It's 42 years of work. It's every time my hands cramped until I cried. It's my security, my independence, my future. And you tried to steal it. Where's the money, Mom? His tone changed. Harder. Where did you move it? Somewhere you'll never touch it. You can't do this. We're your family. Family, I said, doesn't rob each other in the middle of the night. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I set the phone on the table and stared at it. It rang again immediately. I didn't answer. It rang 12 more times in the next 10 minutes. I didn't answer any of them. At 9:15, I heard a car screech into my driveway. I'd been expecting this. I'd made more coffee, gotten dressed in clothes that made me feel strong. My good jeans, a button-up shirt, even put on earrings. If this was going to be a war, I was going to face it looking like someone who knew her worth. The front door didn't knock. It slammed open. "Where is it?" Quillon's voice filled the house. "Where did you put the money?" I walked calmly into the living room. He was standing in the middle of the floor, red-faced, breathing hard. Kestrel was behind him, her makeup smeared, her expensive blouse wrinkled. She looked like she'd been crying. "Lower your voice," I said evenly. "You're in my house." "Your house?" Kestrel's voice was shrill. "Quillon gave you the down payment." I walked to the small desk by the window, opened the drawer, and pulled out a folder. I'd prepared this yesterday after I got home from the bank. Organized every document I might need. "No," I said. "In 2019, I lent Quillon $15,000 toward a down payment. Here's the promissory note he signed. He promised to pay me back within 3 years. It's been 5. I'm still waiting." I held up the paper. Quillon's signature at the bottom, clear as day. "I don't care about your fucking paperwork." And he lunged forward, and for a moment I thought he might actually grab me. I didn't flinch. I looked him straight in the eye. "Touch me," I said quietly, and I call the police. "Try to take this folder," and I call the police. "You're already on camera stealing my debit card. Don't make this worse." "Camera?" He froze. I pointed to the corner of the living room. A small device I'd installed 2 months ago after someone broke into Mrs. Patterson's house down the street. A doorbell camera that also covered the interior entry. "Motion activated," I said. "It caught you coming home at 11:47 last night, going into my bedroom at 11:52, coming back out at 11:58. Want me to show you the footage?" Quillon's face went white. Kestrel made a choking sound. "You set us up. You planned this." "I protected myself," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Just tell us where the fucking money is," Quillon roared. "No." "Mom!" He was shaking now. "They're foreclosing on our house in 30 days. We owe $32,000. If we don't pay, we lose everything." "Then you lose everything," I said. "You made your choices. You bought things you couldn't afford. You borrowed money you couldn't pay back. And when none of that worked, you decided to steal from your mother. Those are your consequences, Quillon, not mine." "You selfish bitch." Kestrel's voice was pure venom. "You're sitting on $80,000 and you won't help your own son?" "I don't have $80,000 in the account you tried to rob," I said. "I moved it. And even if I did, I wouldn't give you a dime. You know why? Because in 6 months, you'd be back, asking for more. There's always another crisis with you two. Always another emergency. Well, I'm done being your emergency fund." Quillon's face twisted. "Fine, fine. You want to play it this way? We'll get lawyers. We'll prove you're not capable of managing your finances. Dementia, confusion. We'll have you declared incompetent, and then the court will give us control." I'd been waiting for this. I pulled out another paper from my folder. This is a medical evaluation from Dr. Rebecca Finch, dated Friday. Full cognitive assessment, memory test, reasoning test, spatial awareness. I scored in the 98th percentile for my age. I'm sharper than most 40-year-olds. I held it up. "Try to declare me incompetent, please. I'd love to see you try." "This isn't over," Quillon hissed. "Yes," I said quietly. "It is. You tried to rob me. You failed. And now you're going to leave my house, and you're not coming back. You'll regret this." Kestrel's voice shook. "When you're old and sick and alone, I'd rather be alone than stolen from." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Get out." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Quillon grabbed Kestrel's arm and pulled her toward the door. He stopped in front of me. We were inches apart, close enough that I could see his eyes were red, his jaw clenched. "I'm your son," he said. "I know," I replied. "That's what makes this so heartbreaking." They left. I closed the door, locked it, slid the chain into place. Then I walked to my bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and cried harder than I'd cried in years. Not from fear, not from regret, from grief. Because I'd just lost my son, and I'd done it to save myself. The first 3 days after the confrontation were the quietest of my life. Quillon didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at my door. It was like he'd been erased from existence, leaving only the empty guest room and the ghost of conversations we'd never have again. I cleaned that room on Monday, stripped the bed, washed the sheets, vacuumed the carpet, found a sock of his under the bed, and threw it in the trash. I wasn't being cruel. I just couldn't stand the reminders. By Tuesday, I'd started to rebuild. I called Dorothea Brennan, my friend who lived across town. We'd met years ago at a community center financial literacy class, both of us determined not to end up broke in our old age. She was 67, widowed like me, with 2 daughters who called every week and actually meant it when they asked how she was doing. "Lonnie?" Her voice was warm when she answered. "I got a strange envelope from First National Bank, addressed to you." "That's my new account passbook. Is it safe?" "Safe as houses, but honey, what's going on?" I told her everything, the whole story, from beginning to end. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Oh, Lonnie," she finally said, "I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I'm not." "You're not?" "I'm sad. I'm heartbroken. But I'm not sorry. I protected myself." "Does that make me a bad mother?" "It makes you a survivor," Dorothea said firmly. "You did what you had to do, and for what it's worth, I'm proud of you." Those words from someone who'd known me for years, who'd seen me struggle and save and sacrifice, meant more than she could know. "Thank you," I whispered. "Now you're coming to my place for dinner Thursday. No arguments. I'm making pot roast, and Judith and Pamela are coming too. You need people around you. Judith Martinez and Pamela Whitmore, 2 other women from our financial class. All of us in our 60s and 70s. All of us fighting to maintain our independence in a world that tried to convince us we were too old to manage our own lives." "I'd like that," I said. Wednesday afternoon, someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. A woman in her 40s, professional looking, holding a tablet. "Mrs. Lockridge," she called. "I'm Patricia Vaughn from Adult Protective Services. I need to speak with you." My stomach dropped, but I'd been expecting this. Quillon had promised lawyers. Apparently, he'd followed through. I opened the door. Ms. Vaughn was polite, professional. She showed me her credentials, asked if she could come in. I led her to the living room. "I'll get straight to the point," she said. "Your son, Quillon Lockridge, has filed a petition claiming you may be suffering from cognitive decline and require guardianship. He's alleging that you're making erratic financial decisions and may be vulnerable to exploitation." The irony of that last part almost made me laugh. "I see," I said calmly. "And what does this process involve?" "I need to conduct an assessment, ask you some questions, review your living situation. Then I'll write a report for the court." She paused. "Mrs. Lockridge, I want you to know this happens more often than you'd think. And it's not always what it seems." "You mean sometimes the children are the problem, not the parents?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." I stood. "Wait here. I have some things to show you." I brought her my folder, everything organized, labeled, dated, medical evaluation from Dr. Finch, cognitive test results showing I was sharper than most people 20 years younger, my bank statements, meticulously organized, every transaction accounted for, a timeline I'd created showing every time Quillon had borrowed money, every promise to repay, every failure to follow through. And the security camera footage. Ms. Vaughn watched in silence as the grainy video showed Quillon entering my house late at night, entering my bedroom, coming back out 6 minutes later. "What was he doing?" she asked, though I could tell she knew. "Stealing my debit card so his wife could drain my bank account in the morning." "Did they succeed?" "No, I'd anticipated it. Moved my money, left a canceled card as bait." Ms. Vaughn sat back, studying me. "Mrs. Lockridge, how long have you been planning this?" I'm not planning anything. I'm protecting myself from someone who sees me as a bank account, not a person. She was quiet for a long moment, then typed something on her tablet. My report is going to state that you're in full command of your mental faculties, that your finances are exceptionally well managed, and that your son's petition appears to be motivated by financial gain, not genuine concern. She looked up at me. He's not going to get guardianship, Mrs. Lockridge, and this complaint will be on file. If he tries anything similar in the future, this will work against him. Thank you, I said. She stood to leave, then paused. Can I tell you something, off the record? Of course. I see cases like yours all the time, children trying to take advantage of aging parents. And most of the time, the parents are too scared or too guilty to fight back. They think, but he's my son, or but she's my daughter, means they have to accept the abuse. Her voice was fierce. What you did, standing up for yourself, that takes more courage than most people have. You should be proud. After she left, I sat in my living room for a long time, her words echoing in my head. Was I proud? I'd lost my son. I'd chosen money over family. I'd drawn a line and refused to cross it. But I also had my dignity, my independence, my security. And slowly, painfully, I realized, yes, I was proud. Thursday night at Dorothea's house changed something in me. Her home was small but warm, lived in, comfortable. The kind of place where mismatched furniture told stories and nothing was too precious to use. Judith and Pamela were already there when I arrived. Both greeted me with hugs that lasted longer than politeness required. We ate pot roast and roasted vegetables and homemade bread. We drank wine, cheap stuff, the kind that came in a box, but we didn't care, and we talked. My daughter Melissa, Judith said at one point, refilling her glass, she hasn't called me in 2 years. You know why? Because I wouldn't buy her a car. She's 34, has a good job, but she wanted me to just hand over $20,000 because families help each other. What did you tell her? I asked. I told her if she could afford $400 purses, she could afford her own damn car. Judith's laugh was bitter. She called me selfish, said I was a terrible mother, hung up on me. That was May 2023. Haven't heard from her since. Pamela nodded. My son tried to get me to sign over my house to him, said it was for estate planning. His financial advisor cousin practically wrote up the paperwork before I even agreed. When I said no, that I wasn't ready to give up my home, he stopped visiting. But you weren't alone in this, Dorothea interjected, looking at me. You had us. You had friends who understood. She was right. Sitting around that table, listening to these women share their stories of boundaries and betrayal and choosing themselves, I realized I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for. A family that didn't require me to sacrifice myself to prove my love. 2 weeks passed, then a month, then 2 months. Spring arrived slowly. The snow melted. Crocuses pushed through the dirt in my garden. The days got longer. I established a new routine. Joined Dorothea's walking group. We did 2 miles every Tuesday and Thursday morning, gossiping and complaining about our knees in equal measure. Started volunteering at the community center, teaching basic financial literacy to other women my age. Turned Quillen's old room into a sewing space. I bought a used sewing machine and started making quilts. Small ones with simple patterns. I donate them to the women's shelter downtown. And in each one, in a hidden pocket I stitched into the backing, I'd slip a $20 bill and a note. You are worthy. You are strong. Protect yourself. A friend who understands. It felt good to give money away on my terms, to help people who needed it without being manipulated or guilted. My bank balance grew slowly. The savings account with $78,000 earned interest. My pension came in every month. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. More importantly, I was free. I didn't hear from Quillon. Not a word, not a text. It was like he'd erased me from his life as completely as I'd tried to erase him from mine. Until the envelope arrived. It was a Saturday in late April, 6 months after everything had fallen apart. The envelope had no return address. Just my name and handwriting I'd have recognized anywhere. I'd seen it on birthday cards and school papers and, yes, promissory notes he'd never honored. Inside was a check, $3,000, made out to me, signed by Quillon, and a letter. Mom, this is one payment toward what I owe you. Not the $15,000 from 2019, not the other times, just a start. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to cash this. I just needed you to know. I remember who you were to me. I remember who I was supposed to be for you. And I'm sorry, I'm not that person anymore. Kestrel and I are separated. She moved back with her parents. The house is in foreclosure. We couldn't save it. I'm living in a studio apartment and working 2 jobs. It's not much, but it's honest. I'm in therapy, twice a week, trying to understand how I became someone who would steal from his own mother, who would look you in the eye and lie, who would value money over the woman who sacrificed everything for him. The therapist asked me to write down my first memory of you. I wrote about being 5 years old, scared of a thunderstorm. You let me sleep in your bed. You told me you'd never let anything bad happen to me, that you'd always protect me. I broke that promise, didn't I? The one I made when I was little, that I'd always protect you. I don't know if I'll ever be worthy of being your son again. But I'm trying. I'm not asking you to call. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to know. I understand what I did. And I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover it. But I'm sorry anyway. Q. I read the letter 3 times. The first time, I cried, deep, racking sobs that came from somewhere I thought had gone numb. The second time, I felt angry. Because $3,000 and some pretty words didn't erase what he'd done, didn't give me back the son I'd lost, didn't heal the wound of lying in bed, pretending to sleep while my child stole from me. The third time, I felt, something else. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But acknowledgement. That the man who wrote this letter understood what the man who'd stolen from me hadn't. That some lines, once crossed, change you forever, and all you can do is try to live with who you become. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. The check went in there too, uncashed. Not as punishment, just as a pause, a placeholder for a decision I wasn't ready to make. The months continued. Summer arrived, hot and humid. I kept busy. The walking group, the sewing, the financial literacy classes where I helped other women learn to protect themselves. One Tuesday in early July, a new woman came to my class. Younger than my usual students, maybe late 30s, blonde hair, expensive clothes that looked out of place in the community center's basement. She looked familiar. It took me a moment. Then my breath caught. Kestrel. She sat in the back row, head down, taking notes as I talked about setting boundaries with family members who want access to your money. After class, most of the women lingered to ask questions. Kestrel waited until everyone else had left. Then she approached me slowly, like someone approaching a dog that might bite. Mrs. Lockridge. Kestrel. I kept my voice neutral. I don't expect you to talk to me. I needed to tell you something. I'm listening. She took a deep breath. Last month, my mother said no to me. I asked her to loan me money for a new apartment. After the separation, I've been staying with them, but it's cramped. I wanted my own place, something nice. She said she couldn't afford it. And I got angry. I said terrible things, called her selfish, said she was choosing money over her own daughter. Kestrel's voice shook. My father just looked at me and said, "You sound just like you did with Quillon's mother." I waited. I saw myself, she continued, really saw myself for the first time, what I'd become, what we'd tried to do to you. Tears started running down her face, taking mascara with them. I came to this class because I needed to understand. how someone becomes the kind of person who would do what I did. And did you figure it out? I think I never learned that no is a complete sentence, that love doesn't mean unlimited access, that people aren't selfish for having boundaries. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. My mom said no, and instead of yelling at her, I thanked her. For the first time in my life, I thanked someone for refusing me. That's progress, I said quietly. Is it enough? Her eyes met mine. For what I did to you, is anything enough? I thought about that for a long moment, about the check in my drawer, the letter, the 6 months of silence. I don't know, I said honestly, but it's a start. She nodded, turned to leave. Kestrel, she stopped. Keep coming to the class. You might learn something. I will, she said. Thank you. After she left, I sat in the empty room for a while, processing what had just happened. Change was possible. Growth was possible. People could look in the mirror and recognize what they'd become and decide to be different. It didn't erase the past, didn't make what they'd done okay, but it was something. Thanksgiving arrived. Dorothea invited me to her house. Her daughters and their families would be there. A full table, loud and warm and chaotic. You shouldn't be alone, she'd said. I won't be, I'd replied. I'll have you. The night before Thanksgiving, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press accept. Mom? Quillan's voice, tentative, scared. Hello, Quillan. Silence for a moment, like he hadn't expected me to actually pick up. I don't expect you to say yes. I don't expect anything, actually. But I wanted to ask. He took a breath. Would you come to Thanksgiving dinner, just you and me? No Kestrel. We're not together anymore. No agenda. I'll cook. You taught me how to make turkey, remember? That year when I was 12 and I wanted to help? I did remember. He'd been so proud of himself, basting that bird, like his life depended on it. His voice cracked slightly. I miss my mom. My heart twisted. That maternal part of me, the part that had held him when he cried, bandaged his scraped knees, stayed up all night when he was sick. That part wanted to say yes immediately. But there was another part, the part that remembered 3:15 a.m., the part that had lain in bed, pretending to sleep while he stole from me, the part that had fought so hard to survive. Quillan, I said slowly, I appreciate the invitation. I really do. But I'm not ready. I need more than an apology and a check. I need time. I need to see, not that you've changed, but that you can stay changed. That this isn't just temporary because you lost everything and you're lonely. He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with tears. I understand. And Mom, I'll keep trying, even if it takes forever. Even if you never, I know, I said softly. I know you will. Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. Happy Thanksgiving, Quillan. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my living room for a while, phone still in my hand. Had I made the right choice? I didn't know. Maybe there was no right choice. Maybe there was just the choice that let me sleep at night without fear. The choice that protected the peace I'd worked so hard to build. I went to Dorothea's the next day, met her daughters, Sarah and Lisa, both kind women who hugged me like I was family, met their kids who called me Miss Lonnie and asked me questions about what it was like when their mom was young. We ate too much, laughed too loud, cleaned up together while Dorothea told embarrassing stories about her daughters. And as I sat on her couch later, drinking coffee and watching Sarah's youngest daughter show me a dance she'd learned, I realized something. I hadn't lost family. I'd found it. Not the family I was born into, not the family that shared my blood, but the family that chose to stay when things got hard, the family that respected my boundaries, the family that loved me for who I was, not what I could give them. 2 years passed. I was 66 now. My hands still ached on cold mornings, but I'd learned to live with it. My savings account had grown to $89,200. I'd never touched the $3,000 check Quillen sent. It was still in my drawer, yellowed but intact. Every few months, he'd send a card. Birthday, Christmas, Mother's Day, never asking for anything, just letting me know he was still there, still trying, still sober. Apparently, he'd been drinking more than I'd realized. Still in therapy, still working. I never responded, but I kept every card. One Wednesday in May, I was leaving the community center after my financial literacy class when I saw him. Quillen was sitting in his car across the street, not approaching, not calling out, just there. We made eye contact through the windshield. He looked older, grayer, thinner. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a work shirt. He raised one hand in a small wave. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding. Then slowly, carefully, I waved back. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't an invitation back into my life. It was just acknowledgement that I saw him, that he was trying, that maybe someday if he kept trying, if he stayed changed, maybe. He nodded like he understood, started his car, drove away. I walked to the bus stop with tears in my eyes, not from sadness, not from regret, from something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. Hope, maybe, or acceptance, or just the understanding that healing takes time, that some wounds scar but never fully close, that you can grieve someone who's still alive and miss someone you chose to lose. That night, I took the $3,000 check out of the drawer, looked at it for a long time, then I endorsed it and deposited it through my phone, not because I needed the money, not because it made everything okay, but because it was time to move forward, to stop living in the moment when everything broke and start living in the moments I was building now. I texted Quillen for the first time in 2 years. I got your check. Thank you, Mom. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, thank you for letting me try. I love you. I stared at those 3 words for a long time. Then I typed, I know. Not, I love you too. I wasn't there yet, but I know was true. And it was enough for now. I'm 66 years old. I live alone in a small house with faded wallpaper and a water stain on the ceiling that looks like Florida. My hands are deformed from 42 years of factory work. My son tried to rob me, and I had to choose between enabling him and saving myself. I chose myself. And some days, that choice feels like the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than any overtime shift. Harder than paying off Gerald's secret debts. Harder than raising a son alone. But other days, most days now, it feels like the most important thing I ever did. Because I learned something in those dark hours after 3:15 a.m., lying in bed listening to my son plan my destruction. You teach people how to treat you. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for them and for yourself, is to say no. To draw a line. To protect what you've built. Not because you're selfish, not because you don't care, but because you're worth protecting. Every morning, I wake up in my house, paid for with my money, my security, my 42 years of sacrifice, and I'm free from fear, free from manipulation, free from the constant calculation of whether I could afford to help one more time. I don't know if Quillen and I will ever have a real relationship again. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But I know this. I'm proud of the woman I became in that crisis. The woman who protected herself instead of being protected. The woman who chose dignity over guilt. That woman is me, and she's stronger than I ever knew. The end. This story is dedicated to every person who has had to choose between their well-being and their family's expectations. You are not selfish for protecting yourself. You are not cruel for having boundaries. and you are not alone. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destruction, even when that destruction is being carried out by people you love. Your dignity matters. Your security matters. You matter. And saying no, that's not the end of love. Sometimes it's the beginning of self-respect.